So barbell hip thrusting, I'm gonna go through a few tips on how to actually set this up. For my girlies who usually use a straight bench, I've actually used a decline bench today. So why I use this is because it's a lot more simple to set up, and I know it doesn't make sense now, but it will. And it also takes up a lot less room. So if you're in a very compact gym and there's so many people, etc., it can get quite disheartening or flustering when you're trying to set your area up. So I've used a decline bench, I've popped it in backwards to save me some room. The only key thing to note when doing this is that you want to make sure you can set up your bar outside of the actual rack. So what I tend to do is I actually pop some weights on prior to putting the bench in, and then I roll the bar away, pop my decline bench in, and then I can get started. So hopefully this makes some sense to you. Now, before you get started, you want to make sure that the decline bench is around the level that you can keep your shoulder blades on and your ribs are already pressed inwards. So for me, that's level 2. So I'm going to come down, making sure that my shoulder blades can sit nice and tight where my ribs have tucked in. So this is perfect. Now I'm going to roll the bar into myself with the padding on the bar. Now you want to make sure that you're nice and in line of the bench. And the trickiest part here is to get the feet and the knees in a position where the minute you raise up, you're going to be exactly in line with ankles and knees. So I would highly suggest that you take a video or you ask someone for some guidance when you first try to do a barbell hip thrust, because it can get quite challenging to figure out where you should be placing your feet. Now, with the positioning, anytime you want to activate your glutes really strongly, you want to make sure that all of your joints are nice and in line to get full contraction. So if you're going to put your feet in a nice position in front of you, I would highly recommend that it lines up with your knees, your hips, and your glutes, okay? So I've lined them up. My hips are quite narrow, so my stance is quite narrow. My feet feel like they're in a really good position. Now, key note, make sure that you're nice and in the middle, because the last thing you want to do is thrust up into the air and go sideways. So I'm here, I'm nice and braced. My hands come onto the bench just to rest them. Now, I'm gonna make sure that my pelvic area is drawn in. So your two pelvic bones, you're gonna draw them in together so you get a bit of a tilt happening. From here, your ribs have tucked in, your shoulder blades are on the bench, and we take a deep breath in, pushing through our heels, and through the floor. Now I can already feel that my feet are slightly forward, and that's just from experience. So I'm gonna bring my heels in a little bit closer, and we're gonna do this again. So nice and in line, take a deep breath in. Exhale, really squeeze the glutes up. Now, there's a couple of options. There are constant barbell hip thrusts, where you're in the air entirely throughout the workout, or there's a thing called barbell hip thrusts with dead stops. So dead stops look a little like this. So this is where you're actually stopping on the ground for a couple of seconds before raising back up into the air. So constant barbell hip thrust, you're constantly in the air, and barbell hip thrust with dead stops, you're stopping on the ground before you engage the glutes to bring you back up.